All right, guys, it is another Tuesday evening. It's just about 5 o'clock, 4:59 according to my watch here. So we'll give a couple minutes. We'll give people a couple minutes to show up. Todd, how's it going? Jim, what's up? How's Tuesday been? How's the weather like where you guys are? The last couple of days, it's been super rainy, but there's been enough break in the clouds that we have seen a little bit of sun. But if you look at the 5-day or 10-day forecast or whatever it is, honestly, it just looks like doom and gloom. But with it being I'm in Northeast Ohio, and I'm sure whatever the forecast says now, it'll change 5 times between now and tomorrow. So, Angie, what's up? Are you working again and checking out the live stream at the same time, being a multitasker? Jim's all day in front of the computer. I feel like I'm getting deja vu. I feel like that was last week as well. Hopefully it's not too bad. Todd, raining for 4 days. Yeah, that's, we're trying to get things done around the house just to make some progress. And this rain is really, it doesn't work for my schedule. I'll be honest. We'll give people a couple more minutes to get in here, then we'll get started. We'll go over some fun stuff tonight. This one should be, we're going to turn a tiny giant, so it's a single tube, single barrel pen. In theory, it shouldn't be too bad. Should be relatively quick. So yeah. While we're waiting for a few more people, I do want to mention that I do have a bunch of social media platforms that I'm on. Obviously, we're on YouTube here. We are also on Instagram. Those are probably the 2 most active. We also have Facebook as well as Twitter. So those are the platforms that where you can find me. All of those links are in the description. Additionally, I have my website, cross-cut-creations.com. I have a bunch of stuff over there. There are some great ways to support the shop. One of them is through Patreon. And I do want to thank my top tier patrons, Mark and Angie. So thank you guys so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it, and I will be getting stuff out for the patrons hopefully real soon. Another way to do that, another way to support the shop, there is a donate button through PayPal. It's through PayPal, but it's on my website. So if you just want to do a one-time donation, if you feel so inclined, you can do that. If not, again, no pressure. My website also has some merchandise on it and some handcrafted items, so that's another way. And then finally, the easiest way is if you guys are ordering from Amazon. I do have Amazon affiliate links in my on my website and under the tools I use section, but I also have them in the description of this live stream as well as most of my videos. So if you click on that Amazon affiliate link, it'll take you to Amazon. Even if you don't buy the tool that shows up, whatever you buy while you're in that tab on that browser, a small percentage of that will go back to the shop, and it costs you absolutely nothing extra. So if I was going to buy something like, okay, let's call it what it is. If I were to order toilet paper over Amazon, I could click one of my Amazon affiliate links. It'll take me to a tool that has nothing to do with toilet paper. But once I'm on that Amazon page, if I just type in, toilet paper, I put that in my cart and I order it, a small percentage of that will go back to me. So it costs absolutely nothing extra. Oddball, Randy and Amanda, what's up? Been decent by us. A little bit of rain the last couple of days, but nothing major. Yeah, we were coming back from the in-laws on Sunday, and we hit a cell that was pretty significant, but nothing too dangerous. Jim says it's warm here, no rain for a few days, need to go for a ride. I'm hoping to get on the road bike and do some cycling tomorrow if the weather holds off. George, what's up? JSG, what's good? Appreciate you guys hanging out tonight. We're gonna, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll recap what we did last week. So last week we went ahead and turned a cigar pencil, and this was the pencil. This was a Braxton Frankenberry Divine Island Design Buckeye Nation pen blank. If you, I did link to this exact pen blank in last week's live stream. So if you want to get this exact pen blank or you want to support Braxton, his information is in last week's live stream description. So that's what it looked. This is what it looks like. I really like that it's a thicker pen. I know last week I had mentioned that I wasn't a huge fan of the cigar style pen and pencils. That was mostly because I really have to think about the orientation of the bushings, not necessarily the size or the style of the, I guess, the writing instrument, because it could be a pen or a pencil. So that's what we did last week. Now, this week, we are going to turn this guy. It's going to be a tiny giant. Some people also call those editors, I believe. This was part of a cutoff box that I got from Tim McKenzie at the Mid-Ohio Valley Pen Turners Gathering. I believe this cutoff is the same as this blank here, and it is called Smoke on the Water. I think it's the same, but I'm not 100% sure. It's pretty close. Tim McKenzie's information for DiamondCast is in the description. He has McKenzie Penworks. His blanks are also sold at Turner's Warehouse, as well as the Classic Nib. There are other, I know there are other retailers overseas that carry his stuff, and there might be more than just Turner's Warehouse and Classic Nib, but those are the two that I know of offhand. These are also his blanks that I picked up at Mid-Ohio Valley, at the Mid-Ohio Valley Pen Turners Gathering show in September. So this one's called Smoke on the Water. This one, these are longer pen blanks made of Alumilite. This one's called Red Dragon because he really caters towards the bespoke pen makers or the custom pen makers. Those are fountain pens. But you can easily cut these down and make kitted pens with them, just like what I'm doing tonight with this tiny giant. Here's a couple oil slick blanks that he does. And then this one, this last one here is called Nebula. They're called DiamondCast because there are actually flecks of diamond dust in the blank, and we'll be able to see that once we get this turned a little bit. So let's go to the chat. Ride with a 103 CI motor. Yeah, my bike, the only motor it has are the chicken legs that are attached to my body. So I gotta pedal or I either pedal or lose my balance. It's one or the other. Love cigar pens because of the size. I do love them because of their size. The only thing I don't like about them is the fact that that the bushings are all different sizes, but they're close, but they're different. So if you screw one bushing up, the whole pen is out the door. Other than that, I mean, and I know that's a small complaint, but that's just how it is. Got to pay attention to the bushing orientation and make sure you put the correct tube on the correct side. Not going to mention how we know this. Yeah, I've definitely had, I've had projects where I've said, ask me how I know, one too many times. So yeah. JSG, I haven't done the between center turning yet, so the mandrel is a bit easier. So that was actually one of the things I was going to talk about. This was also, before I get to the turn between centers, this is the cutoff box that I have. There's a few more cutoffs in there as well. You can kind of see there's a red, there's a green, and I think there's one more of the smoke on the water or something similar. But yeah, so those are DiamondCast pen blanks. I'm going to set these off to the side. And while I set these off to the side, I did want to talk about turning. So I was hesitant to turn between centers for a long time. And honestly, the biggest reason it took me as long as I did was because I was, honestly, I was scared of the cost of transitioning to turn between centers. I'm just opening my bushing case real quick. But, you know, you buy a little bit at a time. I get all my bushings from Tim Geist. And the nice thing is without the mandrel, you don't have to worry about a flexing mandrel or anything like that. You just have to have your dead center and then your 60-degree live center. Now, these guys are what they call adapters. So the nice thing about these, I'm going to turn I'm going to close out my chat just so I can make sure I'm showing you guys. These adapters, what they do is you can take regular mandrel bushings. So let's say I wanted to turn like a toothpick holder or something. I take my mandrel bushings for the toothpick holder and I just slide them onto the adapters. There's one, there's two, and now with the adapters, they slide perfectly through the holes of the inner holes of the bushings, and then you're ready to turn between centers. So that would be a great way to get started. Buy the adapters, and then slowly start to purchase the between center bushings of the pens that you turn most frequently. That's what I would suggest. But it's, you know, I was shy about it for a long time, and I finally just decided to bite the bullet and go for it. I finally made the switch when we were at the Mid-Ohio Valley Pen Turners Gathering. You know, I've been bringing that up quite a bit, but that's where a lot of this has come from. So I was a blank vendor, a pen blank vendor at the last show, and Tim Geist was one of the guys that I was next to, and we started talking, and you know, ultimately that's when I ended up switching over to turn between centers. Okay, Temple Boy is in the house. Temple Boom, what's going on? Yeah, and I will, might have to buy a set of the adapters. I don't know. I don't have Tim's information in the description yet, but I will make sure to get that. I will be sure to make sure. Let me back up and try that again. I will be sure to get his information in the description after this live stream ends, because he is awesome to work with. Okay, but yeah, Tim Geist. That's the guy that I'm. That's who I get my turn between center bushings from, and there are others out there, but that's who I came in contact with at the show. Tim's a great guy, so I decided, we started talking, and ultimately I ended up with quite a few turn between center bushings. All right, so I'm going to move you guys over to the side. I'll go ahead and get set up so we can put this blank on the lathe, and then we'll do some turning. Sorry if you guys are a little seasick. It's not my intention. All right. All right, here we go. The other nice thing about turn between centers is you can just put in the dead center, put in the live center, tighten it down, and you're ready to go. There's no messing with anything. The one thing I will say is if you have a lathe that doesn't have a tailstock that runs true, or that lines up true, that could be an issue for the turn between center bushings, just because if it's not turning true and it's off a little bit, you could have a pen blank that isn't not completely down to the bushings on all 360 degrees of the pen. All right, so now that we're tight here, I usually turn my pens somewhere between 3,500 and 4,000 RPMs. I'll put my face shield on, and we'll get to turning soon enough. Let's see. Between center is a very easy way to turn. No issues with bent mandrels and such. Yeah, like I said earlier, my only hesitation was a financial hesitation. It wasn't necessarily a procedure or a new tool thing. But yeah. John, T-Shadow handles, Tim Heist bushings. Yeah, except Tim Geist with a G. So Tim, instead of Heist, it should be Geist. Geist. Yeah, this This is the T-Shadow negative rake scraper. We will turn with this tonight. You know, TSNRS, tshadow.com. I have the medium handle magical skew, and that's just the regular one, and you can see that the negative rake alone is a lot shorter. And since I've gotten a little more practice with this tool, you know, it's quickly becoming my, you know, one of my favorites, if not the favorite. So yeah, that's tshadow.com for the negative rake scraper. John, no worries. I suffer from fat finger syndrome as well sometimes. I just wanted to make sure that you that you got the right person. All right, turn it down just a skosh. All right, 35. I think we're ready to start turning. Let's get it. One of the tricks that I had learned with this negative rake scraper was to set the tool just slightly below center, and you'll get a better cut. And as soon as I was told that, it actually made this turning experience with this tool a lot better, because I was thinking I needed to be right about center. And as soon as I dropped just ever so slightly below center, the cut that I get off this sharp tool is just a dream. What's your guys' favorite thing to either turn or make? I'm curious. Do you guys have either a favorite? Do you guys have a favorite thing you do when you get in the shop? Do you like to turn? Do you like to build furniture? Do you like to experiment with new joinery? Do you? I don't know. What is your shop therapy look like? My shop therapy is definitely turning, but I know that I have a list that's quickly growing that deals with shop projects. So, there are things like an outfeed and assembly table for my table saw. I want to build a battery and drill charging station. I want to redo my lathe tool wall. I want to make a miter station. So I know offhand, those are just the things that I can think of right away. I'm sure for as many as I remembered, there are twice as many that I didn't, because my brain is broken more times than not. I've got a death grip on this tool and I don't know why. Could be why I'm getting tired. Might be time to rotate this carbide cutter. Let's see what the people are saying. This chat's going crazy tonight. I like it. DiamondCast, if I remember correctly, I believe he is from Tennessee, but again, that could be incorrect, but I think it's somewhere around the Tennessee area. Okay. Northeast Wisconsin. I guess it would be grand-in-laws. I believe they're from Wisconsin, or either they're from Wisconsin or their parents are from Wisconsin. Either way, they're big Packer fans. I'm becoming a Smurf. Yeah, that's exactly right. This is exactly the opposite of last week's announcement that my wife and I were having a girl. This is This is not an announcement of any kind, but this is the exact opposite. Temple Boy. Oh, that's funny. Okay, experiment by making blanks. Yeah, that is one of my other therapies is blank making. I also love turning my own blanks. I also love turning other people's blanks because it's, it allows you to see what else is out there, and honestly, it's just a big community that, we all love to support each other. So there's that too. Turn anything weird or dangerous. Yeah, what's the last piece of fruit that you turned? Turning, casting, CNC cutting, and carving. Yeah, I have a smaller CNC. I have the Piranha XL, so it's got a 12 by 24 cut capacity. I don't utilize it nearly as much as I should, but I've got some ideas that are in the works. Alumilite and diamond dust. That is the makeup of the DiamondCast blanks. I do believe that Tim has a patent on the, for lack of a better term, the formula for how he does his stuff. Turning and carving. Currently been really enjoying rebuilding the motors that went in the flood we had. Lucked out. All they've been needing is new bearings, which is simple to replace. Hey, I still feel bad that you guys had to, that you guys went through the flood, but I'm glad to hear that you guys are, that you guys have gotten out of it so far with, it sounds like, minimal damage. So that's good. Let's keep turning this thing. We're getting close. Continue operation, turn into a Smurf. I'll at least shine bright like a diamond when, as I'm doing this. I still have a little ways to go until I get down to the bushings. I'm getting somewhat close, but I do have some. I still have some material to work down to. Hopefully, my heavy hand doesn't come back to get me in trouble. I know we've talked about this on the live stream before. My heavy hand at turning can be a bit of an issue sometimes. I'm good, and then I'm good, and then I'm good, and then all of a sudden I've ruined a blank that I really didn't want to ruin. So that's why I'm working on not being so heavy-handed, but sometimes it just is what it is. I will say, though, with this negative rake scraper from T-Shadow, I have not used another tool that produces a better finish off the tool. The feeling this tool gives a pen blank right off the tool, and it's carbide, is pretty impressive. Bob Marquis is the guy who runs T-Shadow. And he and I have talked over the last couple of years and become pretty good friends. I actually first met him at the first Mid-Ohio Valley Pen Turners Gathering. I believe it was 3.5 years ago now at this point. And we went all the way down to almost West Virginia, which is about 2.5 hours from where I am. And it turns out that he lives like 20 minutes from me. So it's crazy how small this world is. For the pen turners out there, do you guys like to, when you guys turn your pens, do you like to give your pen a little bit of a belly, or do you like to put your pens on the stick skinny diet? Or are you somewhere in between? We're getting closer to the bushings. I'm not a fast turner, but I eventually get there. Although this doesn't need to be fast because I'm not trying to turn for production. I'm just turning because I enjoy turning. Don't get me wrong, I'll definitely turn a commission if I have one. But sometimes it's just nice to turn for fun. Oh, buddy. There's that heavy-handed syndrome. All right. Now we might get lucky. You can definitely see where I dug in there, but we should be all right. All right. I'm going to stop using the tool right there. And we're going to switch over to some good old 120 grit. The 120 grit is that nice, wonderful gouge that allows me to get down to the bushings without blowing the pen apart. Might not be the most efficient way, but for me, I feel like it's the safest way in order to get a completed product. All right. Well, one thing I like to do with my sandpaper is I like to actually write the grit on the back, so when it inevitably gets dirty, I can still tell that it's 120 grit and not have to figure out, is this 120 or is this 220? Is this 400? Is this 600? I don't know. Okay. Okay. Dave, if it hasn't already been answered, I am making a tiny giant. Sometimes it's also called an editor. It's a smaller pen, but it's a really nice carry kind of on the road pen. YouTube stopped us clicking on Fulkin chat to find their channel and subscribe. Yeah, that's a shame. That's no fun. I did that all the time on live streams. If I found somebody that, or if, not that I ever discover people, but if I find people on live streams and they have a cool channel, I'll subscribe. I go over and click, and it's fine. It's cool. We let the pens talk to us with how they want to look. I like that. When I turn a pen, I like to shape it to suit the grain of the wood or pattern of the blank. That's a great idea. Kind of read the blank and let it decide. That's the one thing with resin, even though it doesn't technically have a grain. I mean, it kind of does, but it kind of doesn't. I do like to turn wood and hybrids every once in a while. Actually, I'll turn whatever, honestly. Turn my blanks close to level with the bushings, then I round the edges. Yeah, those are all great methods. Again, it's just personal preference, and it's just a testament to how awesome and how diverse, things can get in the, when we turn pens and create things. Our imagination is our limit. So when I sand, this is the sandpaper I use. It's just the Diablo stuff. I'll use this to sand to the bushing, and I dry sand in reverse, and then from there we will go through the grits with some Abranet. We'll go from 120 to 400. Slow the lathe down a bit, just to try to keep the heat down somewhat. Not too bad. If we weren't on the live stream, I would have the dust collection right here, but with being on the live stream, it just creates way too much noise. But I still have the face shield on, so we're good. I can feel where I dug in over here, but luckily it wasn't too deep, and because it wasn't too deep, I'll be able to easily sand that out. When I turn pens, I generally end up, unless it's requested, I usually turn them pretty straight on. I don't normally give my pens a belly or anything like that. Every once in a while I'll get one that I do that on, but it's pretty rare. If you guys haven't been with me before, I do like to, on these live streams, when you're sanding, you do want to keep moving. Reduces the heat. It also makes it so that you're less likely to sand down a spot too far or something like that. Sometimes I'll work on one side or the other, but the whole time I'm still moving the sandpaper. It's the one thing I don't like about resin is it clogs up sandpaper like there's no tomorrow. That's also why I use the Diablo stuff, because I've got a ton of it left over from other things, so I just use it, and it'll be a long time before I actually have to buy more. So then that way my Abranet can be in really good shape to do the final sanding, or the finish sanding, if you will. You want to make sure you sand the entire blank. And I never go down past 120 grit when I'm turning a pen, just because I find that if I get below 120, I generally end up putting scratches in the blank that I ultimately can't get out. And well, a scratched blank never looks quite as good as it could have. So I'd rather spend a little more time with a slightly higher grit than less time with a lower grit, if that means I'm going to get a better result. Now we're pretty close on the tailstock end down to the bushing. We've got a little bit of work on the headstock end. But we are close. When you guys turn pens, are you able to take the tool, are you able to take the blank all the way down to the bushing with the tool, or do you use the sanding method where you take the last little bit down to the bushing with sandpaper? I'm curious. If you're able to get it down, if you're able to get the blank down with the tool, what are some tricks that you use to not blow the blank apart? Because that is something I do want to work on. So now I'm pretty much at the bushing on both ends here. It feels really good. I'm just gonna sand the length of the blank. We'll turn this off. And now when you get done sanding the blank like this, you're going to have some circular scratches. So I like to take my sandpaper that I just used, and with the lathe off, I sand horizontally to take the circular scratches out and change those scratch patterns to more of a horizontal scratch pattern. It'll take out the deepest scratches And after I dry sand, we'll go down to micro mesh and wet sand. Because this is an all resin blank, I'm not going to do a CA finish. We're just gonna wet sand and polish this up. And because I'm not using a CA finish for this blank, that also means that I don't need to swap out the turning bushings for CA bushings or non-stick bushings. Okay. Now that we are down to the bushings, I'm going to turn my lathe speed down. I go to the middle belt. I turn on the Rikon. It's a 70-220 VSR, so it's variable speed and reverse. I started on a Harbor Freight. It got me into turning. I realized that I love turning and decided to upgrade. So before we continue sanding, I'm going to check the chat real quick. Oddball, have you seen the Woodpecker's pen mandrel system? I haven't seen their pen mandrel system, but I have seen their carbide barrel trimming set. I don't know if that's what you're referring to or not, but I've seen the barrel trimming set, and if I wasn't so cheap, I'd have it yesterday. Metal lathe. I use a metal lathe and leave a small belly. Okay, that's cool. That's cool, Dave. I do the same. I worked really hard to get my to get my gut, so I figure I might as well trim some off the pens. Steve, Temple Boy, do you ever wet sand the resin? Yes. I will dry sand with Abranet, 120 to 400. There's 5 grits, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. 120, 180, 240, 320, and 400. After that, I will wet sand with micro mesh. The cat and the fish crafting. I missed the start. Cries. That's okay. You're here now. It's cool. The nice thing about this live stream is it'll be available as soon as it processes later, so you can watch the beginning if you'd like. Leave it a little proud, just so I don't sand below the bushing. Been there, done that. Depends on the material. I use a sharp skew to turn my pens. I've heard a lot of people, or I know a lot of people use a skew. I don't have a skew, partially because I'm scared to sharpen it, if I'm being completely honest. Oddball, we get as close as we can to the bushings for sanding. Switch to the CA finish cones for the wet sand. That is, yeah. Save the wear and tear on the bushings, absolutely. Turn close to the bushings and use a skew to round the edges. Crossway Woodworks. Hey Rob, just curious, why would one need reverse on a lathe? The reverse is good for taking scratch pattern, switching up the scratch pattern. And I'm sure there's more to it than this. It's not, reverse on a lathe is not necessarily, in my opinion, it's not a need. It is a not necessarily a want, but it's more of a luxury. But that's mostly for sanding purposes. Just like JSG said, to stand the grain back up, just so you get a really smooth finish. Oddball Woodpecker says a pen mandrel system as well, and like 13 or so bushing sets. Yeah, I'll definitely have to at least check that out. Cool. All right. Now that I'm caught up on the chat, I love that you guys are interacting tonight. It's a lot more fun that way. It starts a conversation, and it's a lot more fun that way. It's a lot more fun when the conversation is, two ways instead of a one way. We've all had those one way conversations where it's really hard to keep it going, but when you guys participate, this makes it even that much more fun. So I'll start this with 120, and I did leave off with 120 when I was sanding down to the bushings, so I'm really not going to spend a whole lot of time here. I'm just going to give it kind of a once over, and I did turn the lathe way down. We're turning it about, right now my digital readout is saying 535, but I usually go somewhere between 5 and 700. So again, I still have my 120. I have the lathe off, and I'm just going to sand horizontally and rotate the blank as I sand. And that just changes the scratch pattern from a circular scratch pattern to a horizontal scratch pattern. And I don't need to spend a whole lot of time here. So there's 120. Now we're going to turn the lathe on. We're still in reverse. And we're going to go to 180 and do the same exact thing. So here's 180. And I'm just sanding the length of the blank, not staying in one spot for too long. You might work on one side or the other for a little bit, but you still want to keep moving. And now we can sand horizontally. Sometimes I like to wipe the dust off just to kind of see where I'm at. And you'll notice that you'll have scratch marks in these first few grits that are lower. If I was more proficient with the turning tool, I might not have to start at 120. I could start higher at, maybe 240 or 320, but that's just where I'm at. So right now, this is 240. This is where the blank really starts to get super smooth. Again, turn the lathe off, sand horizontally. And 240. Two more grits. We have 320, and then we'll finish with 400, and that'll be the end of our dry sanding process. After dry sanding, all we'll have to do is micro mesh. There are 9 micro mesh grits that we'll go through. We'll be able to use the Novus polishing system after we wet sand, and then we'll assemble this and then be done. All right. Yeah, buddy. Sanding once again with the, quote unquote, with the grain. I know it's hard to say that resin has a grain, but you get the idea. Oh, buddy, this is going to be a good one. We're still running our dry sanding process in reverse on the lathe. And we're still running about 535 RPMs here. The RPMs isn't super critical, just as long as it's a little slower. So I usually try to stay in that 500 to 700 range when I'm dry sanding to get the blank smooth. All right. And there's our dry sanding. And honestly, just even with dry sanding, we've got some light scratches, but even after 400, that blank is looking awesome. Once we start micro meshing, it's going to be muddy. When I micro mesh and wet sand, I put a paper towel or a rag down just to keep the ways clean. Reverse sanding for inside of bowls. Yeah, I forgot about that. I don't do a lot of bowls, but I do that sometimes. Okay. Don't you find the sandpaper heat up at that speed? Yes, but that's why I do try to watch it. I will back down the speed if I feel like it warrants it. I do try to keep it around 500, if not a little less. Any of the sanding paste on the market, Rob? So I don't. I have looked at, for a while, I thought the only one that was out was, I just lost it. What's the one across the pond? Shoot, help me out. I forget. But there was that one. The one that I've seen a lot of people use recently is Axe abrasive pastes. I've thought about giving that one a try. I just haven't pulled the trigger on that one. Hampshire Sheen, that's the one I couldn't think of. But no, I have not tried those yet, mostly because I'm cheap. But it is on my list. It is on my list of things to get at some point. So now that we're done dry sanding, I'm going to crank the lathe up to about 1200 RPMs or so. And I do put this in forward. I do my wet sanding, my micro meshing in the forward orientation. So I just put some water on the micro mesh pad and I'll just work this in. Now your first few grits will take the most off the blank, so you'll build up a slurry of sorts, and that's just the abrasive working. I usually spend the most time on the first few pads because that's where the most work will be done. And if I know that I have an area that needs a little bit of attention, I'll spend some time there. But otherwise, I just go lengthwise across the blank. And you can actually see the amount that it's picking up. I don't know if that's there it is. So I'll continue to do this through the other 8. Micro mesh is obviously a wet sanding system, and it goes from 1500 grit, which is the first pad that I just used, all the way down to or up to a 12,000 grit pad. And I've been told that they aren't exactly identical to sandpaper grits, but I don't know what if that is the case. I don't know what it actually is, but the idea is that you go from a coarse grit that does a lot of the, heavy lifting down to a fine, almost like a polishing pad almost. So again, we're taking off quite a bit there. This process really doesn't take a whole lot of time. You want to make sure you're thorough and you want to make sure you do it right, but it doesn't. But it's also a process that doesn't have to take forever. I can still see that I'm taking off material because I'm building up a slurry on these pads. The nice thing about using a water bottle is once this slurry builds up on these pads, I'm not dipping them back into the water with the rest of the pads that I haven't used yet. So I'm starting with a clean pad each time, so I'm not putting that previous grit back into the blank. That's not something I thought of on my own. I definitely had some guidance with that one. I learned from the methods I use have all been learned from people who have been turning a lot longer than I have. I enjoy turning, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself an originator of things. I'm mostly a duplicator. I see something, I find something I like, and then I use that, or I find something that works for me, and then I use whatever works for me, which is what we all should be doing in our shops. If just because I do something one way and somebody else does something another way, fine, so be it. As long as it works and as long as it's safe, then as long as it works, as long as it's safe and you get a good outcome, that's all you can ask for. We're starting to get to the finer grits of the micro mesh. I believe after this one we only have, I think, 3 more grits, so we are getting close. After micro mesh, I did mention we'll go through the Novus system. Novus is a polishing system. You have Novus 3, Novus 2, and Novus 1. Novus 3 is going to be your heavy scratch remover. Novus 2 is your fine scratch remover, and then Novus 1 is going to be your polish. So that'll be kind of the cherry on top to this polishing method. Two more. We have this blue one, this blue pad, and then we have a pink pad. I've also thought about getting Zona paper. I've heard a lot of people really enjoy using Zona paper, but again, I just haven't pulled the trigger. But I think I'm getting pretty close to doing that soon. So we'll see how that goes. One more. And one thing that I have just recently discovered, and I know I'm probably late to the party, but I just learned that you can actually rinse out your micro mesh pads one at a time, and that gets rid of the grit that's in there, and it rejuvenates them, so it's just like using a fresh set of micro mesh pads. There were times where I would use them with the grit on them, not realizing that I could have washed them out or just rinsed them out, and I I wore pads down, and there were pens that I didn't get as good of a finish on because I didn't realize I could rinse them out and have have a rejuvenated set of micro mesh pads. So I thought that was pretty cool, even though I'm late to the party on that one, but that's okay. Now that I have this blank micro meshed, I'm just going to dry it off. And even though I went onto the metal bushing on the end, I didn't go back onto the blank. So we're actually in good shape there, and I will go ahead and tear some blue shop towel into some pieces so we can apply our Novus. All right. I'll just dry this with the lathe off real quick, just to get any spots that we might have missed. Man, I can't wait to show you guys a better close-up of this blank. This thing is legit. All right. Yeah, Yorkshire grit. That was the one I was thinking of that I couldn't quite spit out. Hey, you do it. What's going on? See the shine from here. That's good. Dave, I know there are people out there who use car wax. I haven't used that yet. But that's something I can definitely experiment with at some point. Todd says I put a little dish soap in the water. Yeah, that just gives it an extra layer of clean. Drop a Dawn dish soap. Sometimes throw my bushings in the wash to wash them too. That's a new one. I didn't consider that, but that's the nice thing. Even through these live streams, I do learn things, and that's the name of the game. If you're not learning, then what are you doing? All right. So we're going to start with the Novus system. Novus 3 is a heavy scratch remover. So there it is. And again, I'll put a little dot on the blue shop towel. Especially with a small blank like this, it doesn't take much. And I'll just apply it and then work it in until I'll just work it in for a bit until it appears to reach the point where it doesn't look like it's being worked in anymore. I also cover the entire blank, but I do my best to stay off the bushings because you don't want any of that metal dust to get mixed into your finish, whether you're doing a just polishing finish like we're doing tonight or a CA finish. It's the worst when you do a CA finish and then you get a small piece of towel or something in that finish. That's the worst because you did all that work, you got it that close, and then you get that small little imperfection that just drives you crazy, or at least it does to me anyway. Now that I've worked in the Novus 3, I'm going to take a clean, dry piece of the paper towel, and with some not heavy but firm pressure, just buff out slowly what's on the blank. And I go off onto the bushing, but then I don't go back onto the pen blank. So, and then we're done with Novus 3. Now we can go to Novus 2. Novus 2 is the same exact thing. We're going to put a little dot on the paper towel. And again, this is the fine scratch remover. And I've noticed that this one clogs up really fast. So sometimes you just have to take a small little toothpick and push out the solidified stuff. But I think I have enough on there. There's the Novus 2. And again, I do the same thing. I just apply it and work it in across the entire blank. This was initially, or at least from the reviews and from the videos that I've watched with this Novus system, it was originally intended as a glass product. So if you had a window or something with a scratch in it, you could, dab on some Novus 3 and work in the areas where there's scratches. And then you work in Novus 2, and then 1 is the polish. So Novus 2, we worked it in. We now have a dry piece of cloth, firm but not overly firm pressure. Slowly buff out whatever's on the blank, onto the bushing but not back onto the blank, and off. And then that leaves Novus 1. Novus 1 is a spritz bottle. So I just spray a little bit of Novus 1 directly onto the paper towel. Novus 1 is the polish. And then I just work this in. There's no magic to this one. I just work it in for a few seconds. Again, staying off the bushing, but making sure I get the whole length of the blank. And we're good with that one. And then this last step might or might not be necessary, but I just go ahead and take another small piece of dry paper towel, and I just, if there's any moisture on the blank at all, I just take it off with a dry section of paper towel. And then that's basically it. Now that we have this turned and polished, we're ready to take this off the lathe and we're ready for assembly. So let's go ahead and do that now. We can take this off the lathe. We're between centers and we never used a mandrel the entire time. So let me see if I can. There we have the blank. I don't know if that's gonna show up too well. We should get a better shot of it when we get over to the assembly station, which is currently my table saw. So I'm going to put this blank on the table saw, and then I'm going to move the camera so you guys can see me assemble this pen. So just hang tight for a second. Sorry if you guys are one to get motion sickness, but I'm trying my best to make this quick. Okay. We'll adjust real quick. All right, let me catch up on comments real quick. Temple Boy, I'll send you a message. Dave, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. Yeah. Oddball says shiny. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about this one. I know I say that about a lot of them, but that's because it's the truth. I mean, that's roughly what it looks like right now. I know the light isn't the best, but that's where we're at. Now, with the Tiny Giants, these are super easy to assemble. So here's the kit. I got the Tiny Giant from Turner's Warehouse. You can see it requires an 8mm drill bit, and this is a chrome kit. So I'm going to take this out. I'm going to take the pieces to the kit out. We'll put our blank here. Now this one, now with any pen, it's still important to make sure you're organized. If nothing else, to make sure you have all your pieces. But this is far simpler to assemble than the cigar we did last week. And the cigar wasn't even necessarily difficult. It just had what felt like 100 million pieces. There's the spring. Don't lose the spring. If you lose the spring, good luck. My shop is not in any condition to lose springs, because if that spring goes flying somewhere, it's gone. Not that I would ever lose a spring or anything. That's another one of those ask me how I know moments. All right, so we have, so far I've taken out the ink cartridge. The ink cartridge is a just standard Parker refill. We have our spring. We have what I'm calling our section of our pen. And then we have the closed end part of our pen, and that's it. Now, it doesn't necessarily matter which end is the nib end or the top end. I'm going to take my bushings out. Maybe, if this one wants to come out. This bushing's being stubborn, but we'll get there. Sometimes you just have to use a little persuasion. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this blank, and knowing that it doesn't matter which end is the open writing end or the closed end, I'm going to look and see if there's an orientation that I like. And honestly, I'm not sure that it matters, but I think I'm going to orient it like this. So this end is going to be our writing end. This end is going to be the closed end. So right now, I have my Miles Craft pen press. And I'm going to press in the cap end first. And when you press together pens, you always want to make sure you're slow and steady. You want to make sure you're straight on. If you're not straight on, take the time to get it right, because you don't want to have done all this work to mess it up at this point. If it doesn't seem like it's pressed straight on, if it seems like there's a little bit of an issue, stop and assess what's going on, because that way you can readjust if needed. So there's the cap end, or closed end. I don't really know technically what it would be considered. Now we can press in our nib end, and it's the same thing. You want to make sure you take your time. There's no reason to be in a hurry. And because this doesn't have a clip that covers any part of the blank, you don't have to think too hard about orientation. The only thing you have to figure out is which end you want to be the writing end and which end you want to be the closed end. Other than that, that's about it. Now we have the build of our body done. Now this section is going to twist off. We're going to twist this off, and we still have that threaded insert that we pushed in earlier. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the spring onto the ink, and these Parker refills are available at pretty much any office supply store, which is nice, so they're readily available. You drop the ink in, you thread the nib or the section back onto the pen, put your cap on, and your pen's ready to go. Now, the one thing I do want to caution you guys, if you go to turn these, or if you have turned these, you might already know this, but when you're screwing on this section, when the spring is in there, that becomes a loaded spring. So that section, if you let go, could easily become a projectile, and if that goes across the shop, you might get lucky and find it, but if your luck is anything like mine, you also might not. So there is our finished pen, and this is a great option for a carry pen if you're going out somewhere, because the kit is the kit is pretty inexpensive, and it's a smaller pen. This would make a great pocket pen. Let me see. Of course, I've got a million tape measures, and I can't find one of them right now. But I don't if I remember correctly, sorry guys, if I remember correctly, the Tiny Giant isn't more than 4.5 inches, if I remember correctly. Maybe tape measure? No. All right. Well, I don't know where the tape measure is, but that's not really important right now. The idea is that, this fits. I can comfortably hold this in between my thumb and my index finger, so it's a pretty small pen. It's a great carry pen. I love the sparklies in the DiamondCast. I occasionally, when I cast blanks, I like to use macro pearl to give a similar effect. Now, when I use macro pearl, I want to clarify right now that I know that it is not the same thing at all. I'm not trying to be the same. Sometimes you just like a little sparkle. Tim McKenzie's DiamondCast is the real deal, and I love turning his blanks. Call it the ocean pen. Looks like a stormy ocean. That makes a lot of sense. It's been raining here for what feels like days, and if you caught me at the beginning, I'll say it again. The forecast for the next 6 to 8, 10 days, whatever, it's looking like doom and gloom. A magnet glued with your shot brush is your friend. Yes, that is going to be next on the list. That thing is sleek. Yeah, I really do like it. The again, the hole that's drilled is 8 millimeters, and the bushings, they're not huge. They're definitely larger than a slimline, but it's not a big pen at all. Yeah, it's if you compare it to the cigar that we talked about last week, there's the tip to the there's your size comparison right there. So this one, we went from humongous to super carryable to we went from extreme to extreme. So you know, these are fun to turn. I really enjoy them. Yeah, Steve, a typical day in Ireland, rain. You know, it's funny. You know, the saying goes, when it rains, it pours. And while that's a literal translation, you know, it's funny that that is the case, because it's either raining all the time, or we go days and days and days and days and eventually need it. But then by the time we need it, you know, there is no, you know, happy medium. So it's all good. But this one was a lot of fun tonight. We're looking at, you know, it's about 6:30 now. So if you guys want to stay on and have a conversation, we can do that. If you guys have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we can finish up in the next couple minutes, and we can meet again next Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me. Once again, I do have links to, I do have Amazon affiliate links to the lathe, to the face shield that I use, to the pen press. So those are Amazon affiliate links. I also have links in the description to various places where you can find DiamondCast Pen Blanks. So if that's something you're interested in, that's an option. Once again, I'd like to thank my patrons, Mark and Angie. I really appreciate you guys. You guys are great, and hopefully I'll be getting some content up there soon. If you guys want to support the Crosscut Creation Shop, Amazon affiliate links are the easiest and cheapest way to do that without spending anything extra. But my website has additional Amazon affiliate links, and there are other ways to donate there. I also have some hand-turned and handmade products over there. So that there are ways, but even if none of those ways sound appealing, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me tonight on this live stream. This pen was a lot of fun to turn. Thanks, Jim and Angie. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, Steve, we do this every Tuesday at 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So if you guys are available, I appreciate you being here. If not, catch the replay, and it's a good time. So until next week, we'll see you guys later.